Welcome, everybody. My name's Erin. I'm the assistant curator here at Wallspace Gallery, and today we are interviewing Julie Himmel and Stuart Jones on their opening of Field Notes Part 1, which is the exhibition we're really excited to hang here, launching May 16th. Welcome, Julie. Welcome, Stuart.
Hello.
Hey. Thank you so much for talking with us today. How does it feel? You guys both have completely empty studios now. The work is all here at the gallery. What is that sort of post-creation period like for you both?
I guess for me, it's always nice to send a body of work off and have like an empty studio and a clean slate to make new work in. But my work has so much paint in it that it takes a long time to dry. So in fact, the work was kind of finished before, like a good month and a half before sending it off. So I've already kind of gotten on to new work already. But yeah, it's really nice to see the show, and there's a lot of work in it. It's really, it's amazing to see it all together.
Yeah, I feel the same. I'm in the middle of trying to move my studio. This space is supposed to be a lovely room in our house here in Wellington. Sending 23 paintings away to you guys, I thought it'd be a nice clear out of stuff. But I, like Julie, I got like I could probably see 20 or 30 canvases in different states of doneness, as we always do. It's like I seem to do 7 paintings at a time, depending on what paint's wet on my palette and things are coming off and onto the wall. So, but it was great to sort of get the Field Notes work all in a package and then just put it onto the van, and having just seen it, it's great to always see it's finally finished. I think after it's signed, there's still that one final step of that, whether it's a gallery hang or a frame or in somebody's house, that it's actually done. So away from prying paintbrushes, right, Julie?
There's a part of the process where it, you know, we have our own conversation with the work in the studio, and then as soon as it's sent off, we're like sending it off into conversation with everyone else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's where it finishes. It's
your relationship, that long-standing relationship over these many years as artists, is really what makes this whole show possible. And the fact that you guys were able to communicate and send prompts to each other, you know, almost 300 kilometers away, and be able to have that back and forth, it really made it all possible. This is one of the prompts, beautiful watercolor painting by Julie Himmel's daughter that led into both Direction Lines and Field Notes #1. How did you two meet?
Okay, it went back to the art expo. You remember? It was like 2006 or something. First big show. Other than like everybody's sort of been not even egging me on, but it's like, do you exhibit in a big fair or not? I'm like, oh God, I don't exhibit in fairs. I don't know how to do that. Maybe 2005 or 6, and lo and behold, Julie Himmel was right next to me, and I sort of was thrown in the trenches then, and was lucky enough to have her beside me, and then we've shown together.
We had our work together at Maison de Poivre in Prince Edward County. When was that, Stu? A year and a half ago? 2 years?
It's been about that, yeah.
Yeah, and the work it was sort of hung separately, so it was a curated group show. So there wasn't like this kind of conversation happening, but I do recall that at that show, we started the communication about, you know, we really need to get our work hanging together. And I think suggestions been there for years. Like I remember, you know, curators talking about it. Jennifer Wigmore was one of the people who had suggested she wanted to pull our work together, and it's always been an idea.
I think they reflect a lot of it. Like every single one of them in there for me has got Julie him somewhere. It's about time.
You know, from that very first art fair, our conversations have not been just about painting. It's been like art in general, from like literature, poetry, music. And it's like, yeah, there's just this really deep kind of well of, I don't know, inspiration, I guess.
Yeah, I agree.
As we mentioned, you know, the preparation for this show is based on these years of appreciating each other's work. It was based on the fact that you guys have both the emotional ability and the technological ability to work with each other, talk about your work, feed off each other's prompts from very far distances. The plan was that Field Notes, in spite of your great distances, was going to be an in-person show where people were going to get to see all how much the distance doesn't matter, and that in spite of it all, the work is going to come together very cohesively in person. But now, of course, because of our current situation, the work is going to be experienced almost exclusively digital after all. How does that make you two feel?
For me, I think it leaves a bit of a hole in terms, and not a hole, but a hole in that, like, we feel like it's not done. So part one. So I think it's always good to have parameters on things, and I think knowing that part two is coming, and we've just sort of put this one, you know, out to roost, that it's going to have a life of its own, and yeah, I mean, we had delusions of getting together in a field in Toronto somewhere. The digital thing is, and this platform seems great, being able to walk through it, and with the technology we have now, it's as good as it could be, I think, in light of not physically seeing some of this amazing brushwork that Julie has. And you really need to have that, the tactile. You have to see what light bouncing off those brushstrokes, and I think the same goes to work as well. So we're almost there, but we'll take what we can. And you guys have done a great job in terms of presenting it. So fingers crossed.
Yeah, I agree. I was really hoping to also see the paperwork together with the paintings, and you know, just that tactile quality, the differences in surface. I feel like that would have been a really nice experience for people to see, and somehow the virtual experience is actually a really whole experience. I'm quite pleased with it, though I am really looking forward to doing the real thing at some point.
These are some of the paperworks that Julie had mentioned. The sketches leading up to this show have been quite extensive, and in a lot of the cases where scenes repeat, we have hung them together, and featuring in on one of my personal favorites in terms of part 1, 2, and 3 is the beautiful Of Knowing sketches here. And
I think that was the first one too. I think that was I normally go from photo reference, and I'm very structured, and Julie has always a really brilliant way of experiencing a place, and then coming back and then letting her imagination sort of flow with it. And I was terrified, and I didn't really keep sketches, and I'm more of a notes and list person, so, and little writings. It was fascinating to see her approach to it, and how far behind I was in it, but I'm trying.
I think, yeah, it was a really great eye-opener to how differently we work. Our pacing, both of us sort of change it up every time for every piece. I mean, sometimes it starts on a napkin. Sometimes I go directly into a big painting without even cracking a sketchbook and to just, you know, flow with it and trust the other. And yeah, I loved seeing Stu's work unfold and just work with the prompts that were coming from him. It was really interesting, and I learned a lot about my own process in that way.
And speaking of large paintings, look at that beautiful painting behind you. If I'm not mistaken, it's 70 by 70 inches. You'd recently posted on Instagram.
7 by 7 feet.
Feet. Oh my goodness. Wow.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
What's it like to work on a canvas that big? And I know you said sometimes with these really big ones, you don't necessarily put pen to paper in terms of preliminary sketches, but would you say that, you know, having the momentum to create a whole show like this in a way like that, is that a sketch, quote unquote, to get to bigger work?
It did start with a sketch, and yeah, I would say that the momentum of working on a whole show, especially in conversation with someone else, and how much I learned about my own creative voice through this project. I felt like I was kind of like my voice was bursting at the seams by the end, and I was just like, now is the time to go big. And I think also there's a lot of fear out there, and there's a lot of discussion about what's happening to the art world and the economy, and I just thought, I can't go there. Like I need to keep painting, and I need to see this as something that is going to sustain and just, yeah, play big.
And of course, painting that big physically, I believe is in part possible because of your beautiful new studio. What made you feel ready to make that leap?
It was really the first time ever that I've really invested in myself. The time had come. I had totally outgrown my little studio. I did have a studio outside of my home before my daughter was born, and then when she was born, I moved my workspace into a third bedroom, which was tiny, and it was affecting my work. I couldn't actually see, I couldn't stand back and see my work properly. People would come over to the studio for a studio visit. I would tend to bring my paintings down to my living room so that we could actually see them and talk about them. And it just wasn't professional. And I was just sort of at a point where I needed the right space so that I could create the work that I feel is brewing inside of me, and to be able to see a whole series of work in a larger studio and how the work speaks to the next, it has been really helpful.
What a beautiful line. It was time to invest in yourself. Fantastic. And of course, Stu, your new studio space is also slated to be much larger. You're going to be moving out of a home studio and further into downtown Wellington. Are you excited?
Yeah, I've always, Rebecca and I first moved here, I had a big back room, which quickly got turned into a place for a friend of ours to move in. So I got moved out to the front, and I was bouncing all over. Rebecca pretty much kicked me out because you have to get out of our sunroom. Friends had bought a property. They didn't know what they were going to do with it. And I said, hey, I have an idea. And a big space that I can, you know, go to at 8 or whatever in the morning and come home and know that I was at work.
Can't wait to see how that progresses. And get to see maybe a little studio tour when you're all finished up that can be part of the videos for Field Notes too. Well, I think it's time to wrap things up.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for giving us the space to put this project together.
Yeah, I agree. I'd like to say that as well. From what we see, it looks superb. Thank you.
It's been an absolute pleasure. We couldn't be happier to do it for you too. Hope you have a fantastic day, and we'll chat again soon.